and Cora Ann Mahalik.
Good evening. Welcome to a delayed edition of the 10 o'clock news. Cora Ann's on vacation. Lynn Brown is here tonight. And I want you to get ready to step lively and hold your nose when you're walking the sidewalks of New York. The private garbage companies that private companies are forced to use are on strike. Restaurants and fast food places will be piling up most of the garbage anyway, that could quickly become offensive. We're not talking football. Lynn White reports.
Mounds of garbage started piling up overnight. That's when the private carters of Teamsters Union 813 trashed the latest wage hike proposal by the private carting companies they work for.
We gave them a week's grace, and they still didn't come up with the money.
The private haulers voted to strike last week, but postponed it until last night because Mayor Dinkins asked them to go back to the bargaining table. The union is demanding a 3-year contract with a $60 a week raise. Members also want better pension and health benefits. The private carters are offering a third of that with no raise in the first year, a $25 a week raise in the second, and a $35 increase in the third. When the negotiations turned to rubbish, the union members walked off their jobs.
The employer should consider that these men do work hard on these trucks, service the customers, and they take care of trucks that are worth about $180,000 to $200,000 apiece.
While management says 30% of the trucks did work the streets today, left holding the bags, and all of this still, the 250,000 private businesses that depend on private haulers to cart away their trash. Many have been asked to keep their garbage inside. Some, like small restaurants, can't cope with the pileup. It's going to hurt your business.
Yes, somehow it will.
It's the same kind of concern left by the garbage strike that put the city in a stink for 17 days back in 1981. City trucks had to step in. The sanitation commissioner says he's prepared to do it all again.
The public has to be served. We're not going to permit any health or fire problem on the streets of New York.
Still, the private carters say without a pay hike, they're in this strike for the long haul. A strike that for New Yorkers day by day will only prove to be one smelly mess. Lynn White, Fox News, Channel 5.
The striking daily news unions got a big shot in the arm. Thousands showed up at their rally, including the governor, the cardinal, and a former presidential contender. But the show of support may be the strikers' swan song. A meeting in Chicago tomorrow could mean the end of New York's hometown paper. Chris Jones reports.
The rally was called from the front of the Daily News headquarters building on 42nd Street, and police officials had anticipated a crowd of 25,000 would show up. But at the height of the rally, the official estimate was only about a quarter of that, at 6,000 to 7,000. It was clear that while the rally was called to center on the Daily News strike, much of the oratory dealt with the entire issue of unionism in the United States.
Without the courage and the sacrifice that the union movement has made for 100 years, where this country could be in the 21st century if we reinvigorate the union movement, give it its fullest opportunity to express its talent, express its industry, work for the benefit of this country. Imagine how great we could be.
We've lost 4 million manufacturing jobs. We've lost jobs based not upon lack of worker productivity, but based upon greed and mismanagement and shift to cheap labor abroad. We must not let this crisis divide us.
I am delighted that both the Daily News and the unions are going to go into federal mediation. I will do everything that I possibly can to support that process, as I will continue until the rest of my life to do everything I can to support the right of unions to be unions. God bless you.
The combination of John Cardinal O'Connor, Jesse Jackson, and Mario Cuomo was hard to beat in terms of oratory. The question now, however, goes beyond a few speeches. It's a question of whether or not, at the end of this week, there will be a Daily News. Christopher Jones, Fox News, Channel 5.
Well, Mayor Dinkins got some bad news from the people who rate the city's bonds. They are nervous, so nervous that Moody's and Standard & Poor's are thinking about lowering their ratings for the bonds. That would be big trouble for the city. It would cost a lot more of taxpayers' money and higher interest. And the city's budget gap keeps getting bigger. We're another $250 million in debt. That's on top of $338 million we heard about last week. And supposedly it's all because of a cut in state aid and a drop in revenue. So it looks like more services will be cut. Among the things being considered at City Hall, closing 6 fire companies.
Now, more than 150 Americans stepped off a plane to freedom. Many of them were dressed more for the desert heat than for the chilled air at Andrews Air Force Base. But what a sweet holiday homecoming after being prisoners of the Iraqi war machine. And they brought a whole new set of horror stories with them. Ron Gardner reports.
152 Americans, 4 Canadians. Exhausted but thrilled to see a cheering crowd of friends and family awaiting them on American soil. Included in the group, 42-year-old engineer Richard Anderton of Colorado, his wife Bonnie, and 11-year-old daughter Jennifer. They were awakened by the explosive sounds of the invasion on August 2nd, and when they figured out what was happening, quickly sought cover at the American Embassy. Richard says that was just the beginning of the nightmare.
And we were sleeping on the floor of what they call the Marine House, right on the floor, and all night long, every night, there was a continued shelling of the palaces around us, and the not just the heavy artillery fire, but the small arms fire. And I would say for the first 3 or 4 days, we didn't get much sleep, did we, Jim? We didn't at all. And that's, to me, that's the most scared I've ever been in my whole life.
On the question of whether force should be used to get Saddam Hussein's troops out of Kuwait, Richard says there's only one answer.
I don't think we have a choice. We can't let this man go on with his naked aggression. And I'll challenge anybody to debate on that. He's not going to leave, and it's the only way he's going to go out.
At Roslyn's West Park Hotel, former hostages said it was good to be free. Tennessee's Dwight Derman hasn't known freedom for months.
It was the military that you, or the secret police that would always surveil you and follow you everywhere that you went. There was no doubt about that. They was there too.
Existing day-to-day was trying for embassy workers like Jack Reinhardt.
August 24th, they turned off our water, electricity, and of course it was extremely hot, so we kept cool by lounging around in a pool of water, and yeah, we ate primarily rice and tuna. We had some sauces and that we put on the rice.
Ron Gardner, Fox News, Channel 5.
Well, the hostages may be leaving the Gulf, but more troops and weapons are on their way. There are thousands of French, American, as well as Iraqi soldiers are headed for the front. Our defense secretary called Saddam Hussein the world's all-time hostage taker. President Bush says Baghdad has no intention of pulling out of Kuwait, and we could still go to war.
The reports, these eyewitness accounts that I've heard from Kuwaiti citizens are a catalog of human misery. Looting, torture, rape, summary execution, acts of unspeakable cruelty. What has happened to Kuwait is more than an invasion. It is a systematic assault on the soul of a nation.
And the price tag for Operation Desert Shield keeps going up. The Pentagon is expected to ask Congress for as much as $20 billion for the buildup in the Gulf. And Israel's Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir is in New York. He just received an award for being a defender of Israel. He told the audience some people will try to appease Saddam Hussein at the expense of Israel. He also said he believes the United States won't let Saddam link the Persian Gulf crisis to the Arab-Israeli conflict. And Shamir said Israel will fight back against any attacks Iraq makes.
Now, with peace talks in the air, hostages coming home, and a growing anti-war movement in this country, President Bush is under more pressure than ever to bring American troops home from the Persian Gulf. But as Niles Latham reports, there is a new movement to make sure the U.S. hangs tough militarily.
Operation Desert Shield may still be just a mission on hold, but here in the United States, a full-fledged public relations battle is well underway. A group calling itself the Coalition for Peace and Security in the Gulf has recently jumped into the fray. It's a heavyweight group of policymakers who are getting together to launch a counteroffensive against the peace movement.
Saddam Hussein has now launched 2 wars in less than a decade. Determined to dominate the entire Middle East, there can be little doubt that more will follow unless he is stopped now.
The coalition is the brainchild of former Pentagon official Richard Pearl, and includes such prominent hawks as Gene Kirkpatrick and former Defense Secretary Frank Carlucci. It also includes liberal Democrats like Congressman Stephen Solars and Democratic Party operative Ann Lewis. The group advocates the use of force as a major option. It also goes further than the Bush administration and says Iraq's military machine must be dismantled as part of any solution.
Even if Saddam Hussein agrees to withdraw from Kuwait, the threat posed by his weapons of mass destruction requires that they be verifiably dismantled or, if necessary, destroyed.
No more Vietnam!
Members of the group say they got together out of concern over the tone of the national debate.
What you see here is what you get. There are no hidden agendas.
Critics charge that Pearl is seeking funds for his group's activities from defense contractors, who would seem to have a vested interest in keeping Operation Desert Shield going as long as possible. Later in the day, we contacted Pearl, and he admitted that he has solicited defense contractors for contributions, just like he's approached heads of other corporations. He denied there's anything wrong with what he's doing, and said so far, he hasn't been able to raise much cash. Niles Latham, Fox News, Channel 5.
And still ahead on the 10 o'clock news, more problems for the Space Shuttle Columbia. NASA's cutting the mission short.
Police say a combination of drag racing and alcohol caused a deadly accident on Long Island. What attorneys are asking potential jurors in the so-called fatal attraction murder trial.
And the big premiere for Robert Redford's new movie, Havana. Booze and drag racing. Rosanna Scotto reports.
Drag racing. It's the thrill of speed and power, but some Long Island teenagers found out it's also racing with death. Police say Sunday night, 17-year-old Dean Perotti was drag racing with two other cars, speeding southbound on Route 112 in Patchogue, when 25-year-old Miguel Sordo, driving northbound, collided.
Ejected from one of the cars that was drag racing was a 17-year-old youngster who was killed at the scene. We now have 3 people in a local community hospital, Brookhaven Memorial, who are listed as guarded condition. And we have 2 people who were more critically injured who were helicoptered to Stony Brook University Hospital, where they're now being treated.
2 people were arrested for reckless driving. Sordo, who was driving in the opposite direction of the drag racers, was arrested and charged with drunken driving. Police still don't know how the accident took place or how fast anyone was going. Route 112 is a busy avenue with homes and businesses nearby. People living and working here say traffic does not stop the drag racing.
They party, then they hit the cars out and they race.
How fast do they go?
Sometimes between 80 to 130.
This is not the first time drag racing claimed the lives of young people. In 1987, police say Kenneth Moret was killed drag racing on Francis Lewis Boulevard, slicked down with oil by an angry neighbor fed up with illegal racing. And that same year, who can forget the bridegroom and best man killed on their way to the wedding party, innocent victims of foolish games by young people.
Police are expected to make more arrests as soon as the suspects are out of critical condition. They will probably be charged with reckless driving, a misdemeanor that could land them in jail for up to a year and possibly take away their newly acquired driver's license. From Long Island, Rosanna Scotto, Fox News, Channel 5.
Day 11 of jury deliberations in the second Central Park jogger trial has come and gone, and still no verdict. The jury saw once again the second videotaped confession of defendant Carrie Wise, in which he admits raping the female jogger. Later, the panel questioned the judge about videotaped confessions. The judge said that an incriminating statement alone cannot convict a defendant. Wise and co-defendant Kevin Richardson are charged with rape and murder in the attack on the female jogger.
And Carolyn Warmus is going to hear a lot more about her sex life than she would like. The judge in the fatal attraction murder case says it's fair game in court. The trouble is, a lot of the people who might sit on the jury have already gotten quite an earful. Amy Atkins reports.
Talk to anyone in Westchester County and chances are they've heard something about Carolyn Warmus.
She was involved in the murder of a young lady that worked for a friend of mine's firm.
They're characterizing it as a fatal attraction killing. She was involved in a little love triangle.
Finding 12 people to serve as an impartial jury in the Warmus case is a daunting task. Warmus is accused of murdering Betty Jean Solomon, the wife of Warmus's former lover. For starters, 400 Westchester County residents have filled out this questionnaire. The potential jurors were asked more than 80 questions. Some of the questions hint at trial issues to come. Number 52. Have you or any member of your family worked with or hired the services of a private investigator? That question could be important because Carolyn Warmus allegedly bought a gun from a private investigator. Question 59. Do you have an attitude in general with respect to adultery or extramarital affairs? If yes, what is that attitude? Adultery, of course, goes to the very heart of this case. The night Betty Jean Solomon was killed, Carolyn Warmus and John Solomon allegedly met at this Holiday Inn restaurant and had sexual relations in his car. Attorneys on both sides of the case are betting they can find at least a dozen unbiased jurors. Some residents aren't so sure.
I think they should move that trial out of this town.
Why?
Well, because everybody
probably been swayed by the newspaper article.
Which way?
Probably against her.
Judge Carey told potential jurors to go home, have a great holiday, and not talk to anyone about this case. January 2nd, the group comes back to see who made the first cut in jury selection of the People versus Carolyn Warmis. From the Westchester County Courthouse, Amy Atkins, Fox News, Channel 5.
Federal prosecutors are coming down on Mel Miller. He's the Speaker of the State Assembly, and that makes him the most powerful Democrat in the legislature. He just found out he's going to be indicted for mail fraud. Prosecutors say he broke the law back in 1983 and 84 in what they describe as a shady real estate deal. Mr. Miller says he didn't do anything wrong. Lynn?
A mother accused of killing her 8-year-old son was arraigned and allowed to remain free on $250,000 bail. Shalemus Riegler has been charged with murder for allegedly beating her son Yakov to death. Last September, he was taken to Brooklyn Hospital in a coma. He died 2 weeks later. Riegler is 7 months pregnant. She has been ordered to stay away from her 3 other children. They are in foster care.
And still ahead, why the judge handling the case of Rabbi Kahana's accused killer is taking heat from both sides.
And the little boy who's a big hero, how he saved his mama's life.